No, not always.
7 o'clock,
Oh, well, during the meeting.
ready to go.
And we're on air.
All right, I'd like to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's June 15th, 2021, and we're in the Aldermatic Chamber. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Jette.
I'm here in the chamber.
Alderman Schmidt.
I am here in the chamber.
Alderman at Large, Shoshana Kelly.
Here, I'm alone and I can hear everyone.
Alderman at Large, Michael O'Brien is present and in the chamber. Alderman at Large, Laurie Wilshire.
I'm here in the chamber.
And Alderman at Large, Ben Clemens is absent. And our chairman, Richard A. Dowd.
I'm present and in the chamber. Also in attendance,
Also in attendance, we have Fire Chief Brian Rhodes of National Fire Rescue and Assistant Fire Chief Steve Buxton, also of National Fire Rescue. We have several members of the National Board of Fire Commission.
and I think Alderman Lopez wants to be recognized, or he's shooing flies away in the garden he's in.
Alderman Lopez, you are recorded, sir.
And so is Alderman Lou.
And Alderman Lou.
All right. First item on the agenda is public comment on anything to be heard this evening. Is there anyone, members of the public, that would like to be heard? Seeing no one, hearing no one. Move on. Communications.
There are none.
Unfinished business.
There are none.
New business resolutions.
There is none.
New business ordinances.
There is none.
Tabled in committee. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to take from the table R-21-142, which is relative to the adoption of fiscal year 2022 proposed budget for the City of Nashua General, Enterprise, and Special Revenue Funds. A public hearing is scheduled for June 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Nashua High School Auditorium,
North.
that's north.
Okay, would you please call the roll?
All righty, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jette,
Yes.
Alderman Wilkshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries, and R-21-142 is back on the table. This evening, we'll be reviewing the Public Safety Department 152, the Fire Department. The revenue is on page 37 and 311. Appropriations are on page 150. Who from the Fire Department would like to start us off? You can come on up. And when you're recognized, please give your name each time so that the person that's doing the stenography will know who's speaking. And Chief, do you want to introduce your staff?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and those members who are listening who are not on the committee. First and foremost, I would like to thank you personally, and our staff would like to thank you for your leadership over this past year and a half as a Board of Aldermen. You've had to make some pretty tough decisions, but I think you've kept the community and the employees at the forefront. So thank you and well done. This evening with me, I have Assistant Chief Steve Buxton. I have our Business Manager, Karen Condi, Commissioner Paul Garant, and in the audience, we have Chairman Kevin Burgess and Commissioner Gary Lambert.
Okay,
So again, I'd like to thank this board for the past, present, and future support of NFR. It has been my privilege to lead this organization through an unprecedented time. This is This is something that none of us were really prepared for, as much as we think we were. But due to the dedicated professionals of your National Fire Rescue, and I'll probably refer to that again, because this is your fire department, not mine. I'm just a little caretaker for the time being. They dealt with this pandemic at work, as well as in their own homes. And they came to work every day. Every day. We had no one working from home. And it's pretty amazing. They dealt with this with the utmost professionalism. As chief, my main responsibility is to provide support and guidance to our members so they can safely and successfully carry out their sworn duties, all the while keeping the community and their needs in mind. At the beginning of this process, the mayor did in fact direct us to develop a budget with a 0% increase. We ran the numbers in consultation with the Board of Fire Commission. We quickly determined that a 0% increase, which equates to a negative, it's not a zero, because nothing stays the same, would decimate this great organization and severely impact the services that our citizens have come to expect and more so rightly deserve from your fire rescue department. It has been said that Nashua Fire Rescue just takes. The handouts that we supplied to the group, or to the committee, I'm sorry, I believe clearly show that we give. And we have given. This give resulted in staff reductions in 2006, 2007 that we have not recovered from yet. Yet our city continues to grow. I continue to clip newspaper clippings about how Nashua is growing, how Nashua needs more housing, how many people are coming to Nashua. Full disclosure, the Board of Aldermen did grant us 4 new positions in the FY19 budget. But this was out of a severe need. This was out of need that we demonstrated clearly, I believe, the safety of our employees, but in this case, more importantly, the citizens of Nashua. We were running a staffing model that was 40+ years old. So for that, we thank you. But to that point, Nashua Fire Rescue was the catalyst of negotiating or renegotiating the ambulance contract with our ambulance service provider. And for the first time in the history of this city, we're receiving money from the ambulance service. That money potentially could equate to, we have a 5-year deal with a 3-year escalator per year, with 5 option years after that, is the potential of bringing in $4 million to the city of Nashua for dispatch services. During the last 3 budget cycles, I have requested to fill the vacant public education and investigator position in the fire marshal's office. And this year, I will respectfully ask for that again. Our proposal meets the needs, the proposal that we are going before you this evening will meet the needs of the recently approved collective bargaining agreement that the full Board of Aldermen voted in the affirmative for the Nashua Firefighters Association. we thank you again for the board's acknowledgement and acceptance to provide us with a master plan study. I believe there's a lot of information in that master plan study, and we are not coming before you tonight asking for anything in that master plan study other than the public educator, investigator that we lost in 2006, 2007, that we've asked for the last 3 years, because they have shown, the independent study has shown a severe lack of public education that we are providing the community. We are definitely not serving our minority or our elderly populations, so that are our at-risk populations. We're trying, and we're in the process of putting together a strategic plan. Because what is the point of spending $50,000 on a master plan if we're not gonna follow through on it? And we're gonna follow through on it, but again, that's gonna cost us additional money. But we didn't ask for that money in this budget proposal. The things we are asking for are one additional person, a position, I should say, that is responsible for our public education, which the primary responsibility of that job is to be in our schools, to be dealing with our elderly and dealing with our minority populations. But we are asking for approximately $60,000 in our operating budget, which is non-payroll. And some of the things we're asking for are because of increases in just the cost of doing business that we have no control over. We do, and I'm going to say this, it's kind of self-serving, I think, when I say this, but I think we do a pretty darn good job running this fire department. If you read that study, and if you caught up, if you caught what they were saying, we run this fire department with 2% staff administration, which means 2% of National Fire Rescue are serving the needs of 98% of our organization. That's not a good number, but we continue to do it. And we're not asking for another assistant chief tonight. We're not asking for that. We're asking for another set of boots on the ground who is going to be out in the community, who is going to be interacting with our citizens, and who is going to be providing positive interaction to the members of this community. The 3 members we have in our fire prevention or our fire marshal's office have done yeoman's work through this pandemic. All of these enhancements on Main Street aren't just with a swipe of a pen. They have to go out and inspect and re-inspect and go back and make sure they're good in addition to their regular duties. So one of the things that we don't do good, because this is why I'm here. I got to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm not afraid to tell you, we don't do a good job, and we are not compliant with our occupancy inspections. State RSA states we need to be inspecting occupancies twice a year. We physically cannot do that. We do not have the staff. Think of the amount of schools we have in this community alone. I think there's 17? 18? Those have to be inspected top to bottom once a year, minimum. It's a huge time drain. So Chief Buxton can speak to any questions that you may have on the non-payroll budget. But again, I fully understand. I understand where we're at. I'm a taxpayer. Chief Buxton is a taxpayer. Ms. Condi's a taxpayer. The 3 commissioners in attendance tonight are taxpayers. We get it. We get it. But we cannot keep adding people to the city. We cannot keep adding complexity and not service them properly. Thank you.
Okay. Did anyone else want to speak before we get going on the,
If I might, Chairman Dowd.
yes, please identify yourself.
My name is Paul Garant. I think you can hear me. I'm a member of the Board of Fire Commissioners. Chairman Dowd and members of the Budget Review, I've been tasked by my colleagues on the board to deliver comments relative to the 2022 budget for Nashua Fire Rescue. I'm quite certain I've been chosen not based on any perceived oratory skills, but rather on the fact that this is the 18th department budget that I participated in. In preparing this year's budget, as we have in the past, we've started with a basic assumption that in order for this city to continue to be a growing, vibrant, and safe community for both our residents and those who work in the city, we must provide a level of public safety that cannot be allowed to erode from year to year. Therefore, we begin with a premise that Nashua Fire Rescue will, at a minimum, continue to staff its fire suppression, emergency response, and support divisions at the same level in the coming year as it has in the current. This department has and will continue to be heavily dependent upon human resources. We continue to rely on troops who don their bunker gear, climb on the apparatus, and respond to the fire, aggressively working to, as they say, put wet stuff on the red stuff. Truly a people-powered effort. Within barely a 2-week period, we've experienced 2 3-alarm fires in this city. In both cases, the ability to deliver an effective and aggressive fire suppression response in the initial minutes of the response, to be followed in rapid succession by responding multiple alarm companies, resulted in saving both structures. And in the case of Cedar Street, with minimal damage to adjacent buildings. To continue to provide this level of protection, the department requires a budget that will support current staffing levels in accordance with both the compensation and staffing clauses of the collective bargaining agreement, an agreement approved by the Board of Aldermen and confirmed with the denial of the mayor's veto. The mayor has proposed a 1.7% increase in his proposed budget. That doesn't provide sufficient funding to support current staffing levels to the department. To support current levels, we need an approximate $500,000 over the mayor's number. Failure to provide sufficient funding to cover the cost of staffing provisions could have a significant and possibly drastic effect on fire department service levels. In addition, the mayor's proposed budget does not support necessary funding to provide PPE for firefighters, as well as critical HVAC and IT license.
If I could just interrupt you for 1 second. I think you have to pull the mics closer to you. They're very directional, and you have to be real close. Sorry. Go ahead.
Is that better?
Yes. It goes for all the speakers. You have to be real close to it, or it doesn't pick it up.
My apologies. In addition to, as I said, the mayor's budget does not provide us with operating costs necessary to do HVAC, PPE, and IT license and support. The mayor and board of fire commissioners have not seen eye to eye on the provisions of the CBA. In particular, a provision in the agreement that triggers a bonus when specific targets have been met for participation in the health savings plan has been an issue with the mayor. This provision was a key factor in getting union approval of the CBA. I'm happy to report tonight that less than 6 months after the approval of the CBA, the union has exceeded the first target goal of 70%. They have 115 members of the eligible 158 participating in the plan for a rate of 72.78%. A new recruit class will soon be starting, and I'm advised by the union president that he will meet them tomorrow and will be educating them about the benefits of the new plan. And it is expected that the second goal will be achieved when these members join. That will send some money back to the city in terms of the cost of insurance. In closing, I've always tried to explain somewhat extract issues or numbers in a more meaningful manner or context. And I'd like to leave you with the following. I don't know if you know the value of the assessed property and buildings in the city of Nashua, the number that's sent to the State Department of Administration and Finance to calculate the tax rate. It's 10 billion. That's right, billion. $411,906,743. 10 billion for. Fire department's budget is 28. We are requesting 28,852,023. I get confused. If you look at the cost per dollar evaluation, the fire department of the city of Nashua, with our budget of 28,852, equates to a cost of 0.0027 cents for every dollar of valuation of city property. I don't think it's an expensive insurance program. Thank you.
Okay. If we're ready to continue, the revenues are on page 37 and 311. On 311, that's the fire training center, which is basically a balance cost versus revenue. So I don't know if we'll have any questions on that, but on page 37, if you want to just quickly address the revenue. Some have gone up, some have gone down. Is there anything that you want to point out? For instance, fire protection safety permits is down about $4,000. Is
Certainly, Brian Rhodes, Fire Chief. So I think what we have here is, if you look at the original budget of 25,000, and we're actual through, this number is through March 31st. I think that's lagging 3 months, 2.5 months, which I think there was a severe lag in new permits coming in when we were into COVID. I have been assured on multiple occasions by the fire marshal that those days are gone. He is inundated with plans as of late. And just so this board understands, the plans for the school, for the Bronstein project, that's approximately 500 pages of plans. that they have to go through for that. So that's a big, big time draw. The dispatch services are up there because those are, that's a 3% increase every year, which started out at $350,000 in year one, which was the first 9 months from October of 18 to July of 19. And again, it's each year for the first 5 years, it's 3%, and potentially the additional years, 5 years, each 1 year at a time extension after that. Is the same.
Okay. Are there any questions from anybody on the committee on the revenues on page 37? Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, it's pretty straightforward when you read on the lines, but reading between the lines. So I heard you say that you have a vacant position in the public education position. But right now, I think Nashua is on its second boom. It's not going to be like the early boom of the 80s, but looking at the Bronstein project, looking at the River Rock, looking at the School Street project that's going through, and being chairman of infrastructure, I noticed, like in my own neighborhood, somebody putting up a lot for sale. So single-family homes are now going in what traditionally was, a single-family lot, but it can be divided into two. All that comes you have to do the inspection. So will this position really help out? And is it a matter, are we losing perhaps maybe projects by contractors that are annoyed because of the delay in getting the proper permits, and with this new position, kind of expedite that and getting the proper permits filed in a timely manner, such as like right now we're in building season. So could that definitely help out in that department?
Chief?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Brian Rhodes, Fire Chief. Honestly, no. I don't think we're aggravating anybody, because I have 3 incredibly dedicated people who are doing whatever they have to do, and I'm saying this with all sincerity. They're not taking their lunches. They're dropping whatever they need when someone calls them. They're making it happen, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've told them since day one that I became fire chief, you have to stop doing such a good job, because I cannot advocate for you if I don't have people complaining. And you're going out, I had on one occasion sticks out in my mind. I had a fire inspector come in on a Saturday because a restaurant owner on Main Street didn't do his job and was in a panic. And our fire inspectors take it personal because they work with the community. They're going out of their way to make it happen. And they're not putting in for overtime for the most part. And I'm telling you the truth. I've told them that. Because you know what? They are doing over and above what they are being compensated to do.
Alderman Ryan, follow-up?
Chief, I agree with you. Having to know some of those people personally, I agree we have some of the best. But my point is, we should not have, as a city, expectation for any employee to skip their lunch or skip their valuable time off on a Saturday just to make the place work. And if we're doing that, they have my deepest respect and admiration for their dedication to the city. But if that's the expectation of us as a city on them, shame on us. Thank you, Chief.
I will tell you that we have 4 school projects right now, and we don't have to pay for the inspections, but they are there every time we need them and have done an outstanding job and have not slowed down the projects one iota. So yes, they're putting in a lot of time. And I think the new position is going to be filling in on things that those three haven't been doing. It's things that haven't been being done that we should be doing, that you're looking for that fourth position.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other
Yes,
questions?
As a very wise man has told us, there are a lot of things in life that you can assign a dollar value to. So you have tasks that are a $5 value, and you have tasks that are $1,000 value. We have $1,000 value people doing $5 tasks. It's not efficient. We're not getting the best. We're not getting what we should be getting to service our community. And again, I'll bring up the fact that every commercial occupancy in this city, by state statute, should be inspected twice a year, and we're not doing it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on revenues on page 37? Alderman Jette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when I look at the revenues, I'm wondering if there's any opportunity there to, increase fees or whatever to help pay for these things. You talk about, people requiring inspections. This enables businesses to conduct their business and, earn, income for their employees and for themselves and a profit for their investors or whatever. It's a money-making, they're doing it, hopefully, they're making money doing it. Is there room for us to increase our fees, to help finance the people you need to do the inspections?
Mr. Chairman, may I answer that?
Yes, go ahead, Chief.
Thank you, Alderman, for that question. That's a great question. I think that could be done through legislation. But what is the cost to future growth in the community if we start raising our fees for one type of building or occupancy? And as we are hearing, there's quite a few coming before the board that we're waiving all the fees. Now, I understand it's public good and all that, but at what point do we start turning away people who want to come to the city of Nashua and develop? And the reality of it is, I don't think we could raise them enough that would really make an impact to do that. I think it's a great idea, but I don't think we could raise fees. It'd be cost prohibitive for people to come to the city of Nashua to develop.
Could I follow up?
Follow up, Alderman Jette?
Yeah, so when you say, you don't think this would work, have you, and maybe you haven't even thought of it, I don't know, but have you researched other cities in northern Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, what they charge for inspection fees and whether we are in line with that?
Chief?
So, one of the things that, with all due respect, I can't check with Massachusetts because we're in New Hampshire. It's a different playing field. It's the compensation rates for everybody here are different than the compensation rates in Massachusetts. But I think a lot of these fees are set by the Board of Aldermen. They're not, the fire chief can't, or the Board of Fire Commission can't just arbitrarily raise fees for that.
Could
Follow up again?
I understand. I'm just asking. I know you would have to come to the Board of Aldermen and we would have to increase these fees. I'm just suggesting that, we don't think of these things. You're doing this work, you're in this business, you're trying to get people to, to do inspection, you're trying to get more people You know, I'm just suggesting that a way of doing that is to generate more revenue to help us pay. Because otherwise, you know, it's the taxpayers that are paying these inspectors, you know, to inspect these businesses who are making money. It's not the taxpayers that are making money. The taxpayers benefit from it because it's important to have, you know, safe buildings, et cetera. But, you know, if, could I ask another question?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Did you want to address what he was?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, when we talk about fees for businesses, those businesses fill buildings that are taxpayers as well in the city of Nashua. If you can't, as a business owner, as a property owner, have a company or a restaurant or a store come in and fill your building, you don't have the resources to pay the property taxes. So I think we need to be careful. The fees were raised about 12 years ago. That is a long time. But they were raised at this level of the board. But I think we need to consider the fact that raising fees has an impact on businesses, especially today when the cost of doing business, the cost of labor, is having a bigger impact. That we need to be careful not to drive business out of the city of Nashua.
Follow-up question, Alderman Jette?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you also talked about dispatch services. You anticipate 371,315. So, you know, I noticed on the appropriations side of things, we're paying for the fire dispatch supervisor and the fire dispatcher all ranks. We're paying $831,521. You know, just that's just for wages for those people. So, you know, there's another area. Are we getting, you know, an appropriate amount from? I assume this is coming from the ambulance service. Are we? I know you negotiated something that's probably in effect for a few years to come. But I'm just wondering if there's any room there for increasing those, to make it more in line with what we're paying for the dispatch services.
Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think we have to take into account this is the first time the city has ever charged for that or received revenue for that. When we did our study when we were negotiating, we looked to the, and again, I brought up to you, we can't look to Massachusetts, but in this case we did. We looked to Lowell, Massachusetts, and we looked to Manchester, New Hampshire. And we saw what they were charging for the privilege, I guess, of being the transport agency in the community. And the 350 number where we started was appropriate for what they were. Full well knowing that we were doing this service for free in the past. We weren't getting a dime for it. We did not want to go into this and pigeonhole the city and go with an exact dollar amount that tied us into, so one of our dispatch professionals could be tied directly to the ambulance service. So that's why it's intentionally left vague for dispatch services, because we didn't want to lose a dispatch position who was just 100% for them. But when you look at what we're getting, it's a pretty good number when we were doing it for nothing for the 30 years I've been before that.
All set, Alderman Jette?
Yeah, thank you.
Alderman Schmidt?
I think what we're what we're saying is that the people who are doing the dispatching, dispatch for the fire, and now, they're being paid also for dispatching for the ambulance, is that correct? The cost of these
Well,
employees.
technically, I'm sorry.
Chief?
I'm sorry, thank you. Technically, yes, technically, no. AMR Ambulance pays the city of Nashua for dispatching services. It's kind of vague, but as I said, in the past, we were doing this for free. The city was getting nothing for it.
But the
Follow up.
employees are the dispatchers for the police as well.
I'm sorry?
I mean, the dispatchers are for the fire department as well, yes?
Correct.
So we're just adding this income from the ambulance dispatching and lowering the cost for the whole dispatch. Thank you.
Yeah, I could be wrong, Chief, but every time you have a fire, don't you also dispatch an ambulance?
Oh, sure.
Just because you never know when somebody's gonna get hurt, including a fireman, so you need an ambulance there.
I can say that we have an incredible relationship with AMR Ambulance, and they do an incredible job for us and for the citizens. Yes.
And just as an extra point of information, and I think most, if not all of your firemen are certified EMTs. And the number of instances that I've seen when there's an accident or something at a house, the first people to arrive are a fire truck. And the firemen take care of the emergency medical at that time until the ambulance gets there. Correct?
That is correct. A basic bare minimum to be a firefighter in the city of Nashua, you have to be an EMT. We have many EMT advanced who can do cardiac level skills, but we also have some paramedics. We're not licensed at that level, but the individuals are licensed at that skill level, so they can assist in the ambulance. Of note, this was the third or fourth year that we were awarded the highest award from the American Heart Association, AMR and National Fire Rescue, for successful saves and successful outcomes from cardiac patients. But again, that speaks to the support of this board, the entire board, and the fire department. And we are in all the neighborhoods of the city, and the ambulance, for the most part, comes from one location, so.
Critical point of having fire trucks as close as possible to all the homes in Nashua. All right, anything else on revenue?
Alderman Lopez is trying to get your attention.
Ah,
Chairman
Alderman
Dowd,
Lopez.
Hey, thanks.
My clerk's gotta hit me when somebody's on the Zoom.
I think he was gone. I saw him come back, so I was like, I'm alone.
Well, yeah, Alderman Lopez and to the other aldermen too. We did bring up, instead of frantically waving, you can also raise your hand, which we do have the side thing that we can read it.
Yeah,
So if I was tending to a microphone, but if need be, raise your hand and we could catch it.
All right, go ahead.
As long as I get a chance to talk eventually, I'm happy. So I just wanted to reinforce or support what Alderman Jette had been proposing, because we've been talking about doing something similar in the Substandard Living Conditions Committee. And I think it's increasingly evident that the city spends a lot of time and resources on inspections that doesn't get returned. And some developments do have an asymmetric ability to actually provide return on that. So yes, a small business raising the fee on them may have a major impact on their ability to operate, or it may be difficult for them to choose to add on a development or something along those lines. Larger businesses that are going to take away larger amounts of resources if there is a fire, and have a much higher overhead in terms of safety, like there's much higher consequences because it's less controllable, and also take more fire department time to inspect and to evaluate. I think they should be contributing more. So I would ask that the chief and the fire department consider what Alderman Jette has been requesting, maybe looking at whether we can revise our fee structure to scale with this amount of square footage that's being covered, or something along those lines to better represent the true cost that it represents. Because what I heard as concerns in reply were, well, we can't look at what Massachusetts does, it's a completely different game. And then in the immediate follow-up question, we were looking at what Massachusetts did. So we don't necessarily have to take their whole idea, but I think we can definitely use it to justify some change. And I think it's important for the fire department to know that the Board of Aldermen, if we were approached by the fire department to modify these things, we generally go with what you're requesting and what you're recommending with regards to fire safety. That's why we usually fund your budget at the levels that you're requesting. And that's why the fire department has typically been so successful. I feel like there's maybe some unnecessary hard feelings from when we were doing union negotiations. I felt like those were not necessarily as cooperative as they had to be with regards to aldermen. But as was said initially, this is our fire department, meaning our everybody's, not the Board of Aldermen's, not the police commissioners. Everybody in the city has ownership in this this fire department, and it's an essential service. No one's going to deny that in as rapidly and expanding a city as Nashua, and also with a city with as many older buildings in place, we definitely need a top level fire department. I'm fully in support of the education piece and the educational position, because not only do I not want to see any kind of fire disasters disproportionately impacting people who may have language barriers or cultural barriers, or maybe economically forced to be over occupancy. But I also don't want to see somebody launching a firework and burning down the neighborhood. And it's definitely a concern, in my particular neighborhood. So I think the education piece is important. I think the revenue piece is important too, because we shouldn't be feeling confrontational or competitional between the Board of Aldermen and the fire department over funds if the cause of the increased expenses is the expansion of the city. So there are economic development concerns. The economic development office can manage those, and they can come forward and tell us, hey, you're going to slow down business. But from what I'm hearing from the fire department, in order to sustain safe growth in our city, we may need to put limiters on how big and how quickly places expand. And I think one of the more obvious ones is a financial limiter. We need to be able to fund the work that's being asked of the fire department to do. So we need the fire department's guidance to better do that. And I think rather than continually looking at tax revenue as the only source, we may need to look at how do we couple these inspections with development and start changing some expectations for how to manage in Nashville.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Just a couple quick things. One, any of the revenues that you see in the yellow pages, when they get paid to the city, go directly into the general fund. They don't go to the different departments to be able to be spent. The only relationship might be in the following year if there was more monies available because of revenues. The other thing is just a consideration, and this may not be the time to raise the fees because as is readily been advertised in all the newspapers and publications relative to building, and I see a lot of them. The average cost to build a home right now is $36,000 more than it was a few months ago. And people that are doing construction, the margins are getting very narrow. And if they're too narrow, they won't invest the money. So just have to be careful overall. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at it at some point, but probably near term is not the point in question. Alderman Schmidt, did you have a question?
Very quick.
Mr. Chair, if I can respond to your comments, because it sounded like they were in reference to mine.
Not exactly, no, everybody's, but is it a follow-up? Because Alderman Schmidt has a question.
I'll be brief. I would just say that I'm not expecting it to happen right now or to fix this immediate problem, but I think it's work we should start doing because this immediate problem informs the reason for it needing to be done.
Okay, Alderman Schmidt?
Thank you. I just would like to ask if you could check the other cities in the state of New Hampshire and see what they charge as a fee schedule and get that back to us so that we can see, we can compare whether or not an extra $5 here or or maybe something's too high and it should come back down. But it would be really valuable for us to know in the future. And I agree, we shouldn't do it now. Now is not the time to raise any kind of fees, I think. Next year, maybe, and it would be good to have the data so we would know. Thank you.
Yep. Another task for your assistant chief that adds to his ledger of many things he does.
Consider that done.
Thank you.
Any other questions on revenues?
Alderwoman Lou?
Alderwoman Lou?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to offer my perspective on what was being discussed. I find it really concerning to hear that some of our responsibilities of inspection are not being done and not able to be done because of budget constraints. And I think, to me, that's an important thing. So we should be looking for ways to, solve this shortfall. I also wanted to respond to the inflation in the cost, the current increase in costs of building. I just want to, point out the perspective that this may be due to increased funds in the economy, greater demand and greater interest in buildings. So, when we have a shortfall, I think we should be careful not to worry about the builders or the costs that are being incurred, because they're certainly choosing to incur the costs. So that's my thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't making the point that we want to worry about their profit. It's just that whether they'll invest in the city of Nashua. Chief?
Thank you, Chief Rhodes. Just as a point of clarification, I'm not against raising fees. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying we have to be careful how we do that. And to be realistic, we are not going to fund this position based upon a small increase that we put in fees. But I'll say it again, Nashua Fire Rescue is not adverse to raising fees. And we will get that information to the board, and in particular, Alderwoman Schmidt.
Yes, thank you. Any information, please send it to Donna so she can give it to all the aldermen. Thank you. Any other revenue questions? Seeing none, we'll go to the appropriations on page 150. Are there any particular line items on there that you would like to discuss before we open it up to general questions? Are there any that have significantly increased or significantly decreased?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Rhodes, Fire Chief. So the biggest one, the biggest addition is the addition of the public education investigator position that we have budgeted at $82,109. Everything else in the 51 series is contractual.
Mm-hmm. Everything in 52 is pretty well set too.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay. And professional and technical services have stayed pretty level. You might want to explain 54-243 high-vac maintenance.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Assistant Chief Buxton.
Sure.
Hi, Steve Buxton, Assistant Chief Nashua Fire. So traditionally, we're looking for an increase in the HVAC line this year because over the past 3 years, we've averaged anywhere between $25,000 and $30,000 underwater. So we've spent that above and beyond what you've given us. That line is currently funded at $23,000 a year. That's $23,000 to maintain HVAC systems in 7 facilities within the city. So it's very easy to see how we have to rob Peter to pay Paul to make ends meet on that line. We have a preventive maintenance program in place already. These costs are incurred just by average breakdowns in the systems and replacing broken parts. If you remember, the master plan that the chief has spoken to a few times already stated that we're gonna have to have a significant investment in the fire department facilities in the near future. This is just one spot. We are having a strategic planning committee put together to try to prioritize the things that we need to move forward, bigger projects, replacements of systems and stuff like that. But the reality of it is, I don't see this line ever being able to be decreased. It actually needs to be increased. We're managing 7 facilities, HVAC systems on this one line. So we take a lot of money from different areas to make things work.
And some of your facilities are rather old, which means you've got old systems which are expensive to maintain and probably looking at some point to be replaced. So,
Correct.
Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, on that account of HVAC maintenance and everything, would this be like, have you looked into getting like a contract with a particular provider to do maintenance contract for some of these stations? And is there a cost-benefit analysis by going that route instead of calling somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, we got the AC broken or the heater system's down or something like that? Are you looking into that? And
Yes, Chief Buxton?
Steve Buxton. Yeah, Alderman O'Brien, we do have a preventive maintenance program. Currently, we have been doing business with A&E Mechanical for several years now. They do provide all the preventive maintenance to our HVAC systems in all of our facilities. They do a very good job for us. But again, at the end of the day, most of this line is paid directly to them, just through breakdowns and stuff like that takes place.
very good, thank you.
Yeah, the only other one that I think deserves an explanation is 54,428, technology operations, which wasn't in last year's budget, and is fun, looking for 20K there. Could you just cover that?
Yep, Steve Buxton, Nashua Fire. This is basically new to our budget. It's a IT technology software program called Target Solutions. Through some of the CARES money that became available due to COVID, we approached the city for some of our, what we call our reconstitution efforts. One of the programs we pushed forward was this training platform. It would allow us to do remote training in the fire stations rather than having to pull all of the companies together to do training in a big classroom type setting over at Lake Street. The city was able to give us the hardware end of things. The city IT department with our fire alarm division worked to get the Wi-Fi and fiber stretched throughout all the fire stations. They were able to purchase the iPads. Unfortunately, they weren't able to purchase the licenses that we need to run the software program. This was spelled out in the master plan as something that would assist us in documenting our training hours, an area that they specified we are weak in. We know training takes place every day, multiple times a day. The problem is it doesn't always get documented appropriately. This would put the burden on the individual to document his training, and that's necessary for several reasons. It assists us with our ISO rating. In addition to that, the members on a biannual basis have to recertify their EMS licenses. This would minimize the amount of time that we have to get them together to do that. Right now, we probably lose about 5 months out of the calendar year for the training division to accomplish the recertification process. So that is what that line is for. We did have the support of the city moving forward. They are in favor of it. Of course, we have to get the funds through our budget, so.
Okay, thank you. Questions on appropriations?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
may I add a little to that?
sure.
So Brian Rhodes, Fire Chief. So Chief Buxton spoke of the ISO rating, which is the Insurance Service Office, which sets the insurance rates for commercial businesses in your community. Well, currently, we're an ISO Class 2 community. There are no ISO Class 1 communities in the state of New Hampshire. I'm somewhat disappointed to report that we're less than 2 points shy of being an ISO Class 1 fire department. But one of the deficiencies we had, as Chief Buxton said, was our members are training every day. It's a documentation problem. So one of the key features to this Target Solution software platform is it tells us exactly what we need to be ISO compliant for each firefighter's level of training per year. The additional thing this does, this basically puts it in the firefighter's lap. Now that they become accountable, we'll be able to see when they logged on, what they're missing, what they've completed. One of the issues, I hate to bring up Alderman O'Brien here from his past fire department experience, but I will.
Go ahead, you want to.
But our system of communicating is still rather archaic. Yes, we have email, but we work on a two-day mail delivery system where we deliver mail on Thursdays and Sundays. And that's when all important correspondence go out. It's a piece of paper that goes on a bulletin board. We have no accountability to say that everyone in that station saw that. This new software will give us that accountability because we will be able to see who has read it, and there'll be a time date stamp on that. So this is technology that we never, ever thought. Chief Buxton and I saw this technology 3-4 years ago. We were at a conference in Orlando, Florida. And we said, wow, wouldn't this be great if we could do this? Then COVID hit. So in my mind, COVID was a good thing for us if we could get Target Solutions. Because again, the other thing it's going to do is it's going to take us out of our traditional training models of putting 12 to 16 people in a room for extended periods, that we'll be able to do a lot of stuff at their own pace, on their own, back in their own fire stations, which keeps them in their district, which keeps them closer to their response district. They'll still need to get together, but nowhere near the frequency of the duration where we're currently at, so, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Lou?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. On overtime coverage that went up 3.5 times, I understand it's contractual. I don't really understand that line. If anyone could just help me understand why it went up 3.5 times.
Which one are we, Chief? Oh.
I can address.
Yes.
Karen Condi. The line actually moved from additional hours to overtime coverage. If you see additional hours has nothing now. That line was combined at the request of the finance department.
Thank you, I didn't notice that.
No problem.
All set?
Yes.
Any other questions on appropriations? Alderman Jette?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, under 52, fringe benefits, pension expense, is that the number that the mayor keeps talking about, how the state has passed down an increase in pension expense? Is that why that number is so high?
Chief, you want to handle it, or?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, that's I believe that's the number he's speaking of, but we have no control over that number. And the firefighters of the city pay more from their check than any other city employee pays towards there. That's just a fact. We pay more than the police, we pay more than the teachers, we pay more than Public Works. That's just how the state has that percentage laid out. Yeah.
And the firefighters pay one amount, the city pays another amount. I believe this is the city's amount. And that was the increase based on what we got from the state, where they decreased the amount of interest they're earning on their money, which is a big concern for me, and I hope they come down and we can talk to them, but that's where that came from. Follow up, Alderman Jette?
Yeah, so I was just trying to identify it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the next item, benefits, you know, what is that health insurance? What is?
That's,
52,
excuse me, I'm
300?
sorry.
Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a supplied number from the financial division, so I can't tell you exactly what that encompasses. My assumption is yes, that has to do with healthcare and some of the other fringe benefits, yes.
Okay. So if I could, I noticed Alderman
I think
O'Brien.
Alderman O'Brien just wanted to add something for your first question, so maybe we let him and then I'll come back to you.
Right, well, what I just wanted to add, according to the New Hampshire retirement system, in loose numbers, the police pay 12.3% of their salaries into the pension system. The fire department pays 12.5. I have asked the New Hampshire retirement system, what is the disparity? They cannot tell me why that is, but just so that you know, our fire department employees pay more into the retirement system than the police do. And mathematically, they stay longer. So you figured you would get, the group that stays longer would get the discount rate compared to the group that stays the shortest. But correct me, Chief, what is it? Average firefighter's lifespan is 20 years versus the police 20 or something 30 years versus the police 20, something like that, or pretty close to 30 years for a firefighter.
Chief?
Yes, thank you. I can't give you a definitive answer on that. I would say it's 25 anyways, yeah, for a firefighter.
Other question, Alderman Jette?
Yes, please, thank you. So whatever percentage the firefighters pay, this $5.5 million is the city's share. That's beyond, the increased amount that the firefighters pay.
I believe that's what John Griffin told us, yeah.
This is what the city pays in addition to that. So, so I looked at, in your PowerPoint presentation that you sent us ahead of time, I appreciated you showed us, some comparisons to other New Hampshire cities, and you included a Massachusetts, Salisbury, Massachusetts, in there. And so I looked at Manchester, which is, according to your chart, and I'm not trying to be confrontational here. I'm just trying to understand and help the taxpayers understand. So in your chart, you listed Manchester as having a population of 113,035, and Nashua 90,323. So based on that, I looked at Manchester's budget. They do their budget a little differently. Their budget, your budget is, your proposed budget is 28 million, and theirs is about 22 million. But they don't include in that, I think I'm correct in this, they don't include the retirement or the benefits number. So I added in their retirement number, which is $6,585,716 compared to our, 5,597,000. And then, their benefits, are not included in their fire department budget. That's part of their city budget. So I wasn't sure how to calculate that, so I just threw in what we pay for benefits, and I rounded it up to 4 million. And, so that got me approximately 32 million plus for Manchester. And, so Manchester, comparing the populations, and I understand, Manchester has, I think, more fire stations, which I assume they have more firefighters and more fire equipment, fire engines, et cetera. So when I took their 32 million plus, and comparing the populations, I came up with Nashua is about 80% of Manchester.
That's going out on.
So when I multiplied that, I came up with about 26 million for, what I propose would be appropriate for Nashua. But your proposal is for 28 plus, and I'm wondering, for my benefit and for the taxpayers' benefit, why is Manchester able to fund their fire department for, less money, if you accept my extrapolation, for less money than it costs us? Do you have an answer for that? Have you looked into that, or do you have any idea?
Chief? Thank you. Thank you for that question, Alderman. Yeah, I think, I don't know if we have enough time tonight to get that deep into the weeds, but this isn't really a calculation that you can take guesstimates at. I think the biggest thing we have is, we have a collective bargaining agreement that has been in place for over 75 years in Nashua, and that's where we work towards. I think there are probably things, as you said, our budget request is laid out in black and white before you. Theirs is not. So what else is that isn't showing, that doesn't show up on their ledger, so to speak? I think it comes down to, at the end of the day, what type of fire protection and emergency services is the community willing to support. They run a different model in Manchester than we do. I think they went through some pretty heavy years of staff reductions, but they're building back up now. They're getting back some of those fire companies they used to have. It's not really full disclosure, these numbers are for your benefit, because you asked these questions earlier on, and that's why we found them. But these don't even tell the whole story, because you get so deep into the weeds with union contracts, and you get into some of the fire chief deals out there. There's fire chiefs that are making close to what I make, for a community, a third of the size, and for an organization, that's a third of the size of what we have here. But they have buyback deals. They're buying back vacation time and sick time every year. They have the ability to not take the health care. If their spouse has health care, they're being compensated for that. We don't have that ability here. So I think that's why I'm saying it's very hard to try to go apples to apples with particularly fire departments. I can't speak to any other department, but I do know there's a lot of variables. There's education involved. There's different training certifications involved. Longevity is involved, which the city of Nashua used to have, but has eliminated, which the firefighters union no longer has that. So that is sunsetting in our in our budget. It's just kind of a difficult question to really get that deep into the weeds, to give you a really solid number to say, this is why we are 80% of Manchester.
Commissioner Grant, did you want to add something?
Yes, there are items in the budget that we do not control. The amount for pension and health costs and benefits, but also the city tells us what we're going to spend for fuel, for heat, for water, for diesel. Whether those are in the Manchester budget or they're rolled up into another account within the city of Manchester, we can't tell you, I can't tell you. So those are rolled into our budget. So fuel, heat, water, electricity are in the budget, and you see what it costs for the fire department.
Anything else, Alderman Jenny?
No, thank you very much.
Other questions from the? I just have a couple quick things just for clarifications. One thing is, that's kind of concerning to me, and it's not just the fire department, but you have one station that you have solar panels all over your roof. And we put solar panels on Conway Arena, and we're putting them in all our schools. What I haven't seen is any savings that we're realizing from that electricity. Where's it going? And I didn't get an answer. You can't answer that question. And I wasn't expecting you to answer it. But I asked that question of our new energy management person, and I'm still waiting for an answer. But I don't know as we have a handle on that yet. But long-term, electricity should be going down. We're just putting a new generator in the dam that we own, and that should be far more efficient, generate more electricity. Of course, it's all dependent on the amount of water we get. We keep having rainstorms like an hour ago, we'll be all set. But that's one thing. I noticed your electricity was the same amount as last year, and I'm hoping the city is going to be recognizing some savings, and if the people in Concord would give us a higher net metering number, we'd be even better off. Gotcha.
Working on it.
Gotcha. The other thing is clothing and uniforms. It went up 20K. I'm going to believe that's because the cost of uniforms is going up.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, that's what I figured. I just wanted to ask that question in case anybody saw that and said, well, why'd that go up? No.
That again, though, that went up because of a contractual increase. So the firefighters were getting $600 a year for last 20?
Yeah, quite.
20 plus years.
Yeah.
So in this contract, it was raised to bring that up, you know, $50 in 1 year and to get them to $700. Again, all of these, the black boots that we require our members to wear, the work duty boots, they're well over $150 a pair, $200 a pair now. And then if you start, you know, uniform pants are $60, $70 a pair, and you start ruining those, it adds up quick.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to add on appropriations? Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I think the committee, I hope the committee understands that we understand what, you know, what's happening here. But you pay me, you pay Assistant Chief Buxton a lot of money to administer the fire department. And we do that to the very best of our ability. And between, there's four of us in the fire department. There's Chief Buxton, there's Karen, and there's Anne Marie Boucher. And I can tell you, we're crunching numbers daily. I go into Karen's office every day when I get a requisition. What's this one for? Can you tell me what that one is? because my memory's not so good anymore. And she goes, oh, that's for this. So we are watching every penny we have. We are not coming back to this board. Historically, we do not come back to this board at the end of the year and say, we need money, we have a problem. We try to keep things within our own four walls and only come to you when we really need something. And we take great pride in that. Our firefighters take great pride in the job they do for the citizens of Nashua. And I think, you know, if we want to start comparing us to other fire departments, I don't want to jinx us, but there's a reason why we don't have a lot of cellar holes in the city of Nashua. That's because you fund us appropriately, we have proper staffing, and we have extremely dedicated professional people who are working for us, who come to work and they give it their all every day. And to go back to my prior statements when I opened up, Nashua Fire Rescue is not a taker. We're not a taker. We give back to this community a lot. And I don't know if you saw it, but the Nashua Firefighters Union just donated 190 pair of sneakers to the Arlington Street Community Center. Takers don't do that. Thank you.
Two additional points maybe. One is, you just recently had an extremely large fire within the last couple of weeks, I think. And you had to deploy every single truck and firefighter on duty from the city of Nashua, probably called in others. And all of our stations had to be covered by other communities' trucks. So any lack of additional firefighter would have been a problem. The mayor's reduction in your budget, I'd like to let the committee know what you think that impact would be if that stuck.
So are we talking the 0 or the 1.7%? I'm sorry.
I'm
Brian
talking about
Rose.
the mayor's line item of 495,955. Bottom line reduction adjustment. So it's a bottom line reduction. It doesn't cover any particular line, but in order for you to meet that with your budget, you would have to reduce something in your appropriations. And
so I feel like we're in collective bargaining and we're going to start talking about what we need and what we don't need, but you know what? That's why we're here. We're going to tell you the truth. This is what we need. 2.525%. That's the minimum we need to keep Nashua Fire Rescue as it is today for the next year. That's 0 increases in our operating budget. That's no new additional person for the fire marshal's office. To satisfy the mayor's request for a 0% increase, we would be closing 1 fire company. So in the context of Nashua, we have 9, so we would be down to 8. But let's put that in human factors. That's 16 people we would be laying off at a minimum. We would be increasing response times to other parts of the city. To your point, Mr. Chairman, when we do have these incidents that escalate quickly, we would be calling in neighboring communities much faster. It adds to additional increases in wear and tear on our apparatus. If they're on the road more, it's going to be more fuel, it's going to be more tires. You know how much a tire costs for a fire truck? About $900 for 1 tire. The fire engines have 6. and the ladder trucks have 10. And then there's also the potential, if we lose a fire company, because in that master plan study, there was reference to NFPA 1710, which is your deployment model, which tells you how your effective response force, how quickly you can get in so many minutes within your community. So we're going to be dangerously close to dropping from an ISO 2 to an ISO 3, which means an increase to the insurance rates for our business community, if that happens. I wish there was a better answer for me to tell you that we could do this, but again, the cuts that we sustained in 2006, 2007, we haven't recovered from. And the city continues to grow, and we keep asking our people to do more and more and more. Trust me, I would love to come to you and say, I need a second assistant chief. Because I think it would be really beneficial for us. But I think our employees need the assistance more than Chief Buxton and I do at this point. Not to say it's not going to come to you in the future, but at this point, we've been asking for assistance in our fire marshal's office. This will be the 4th year in a row. And it'll be money well spent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any additional questions for the fire? Alderman Jette?
Yeah, Chief,
Could you pull your microphone closer, because we keep getting flag signals from the television guys.
Chief, I didn't quite understand. You said that in order to meet the mayor's proposed budget, you would have to eliminate a fire company, which would equate to laying off 16 people. And then you talked about increased wear and tear on equipment. How does eliminating a fire company increase wear and tear on equipment?
Chief?
Sure, thank you. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, we have 3 ladder trucks in the city of Nashua currently. And we're forced to reduce something. And I say, we decide to the Board of Fire Commission and the administration, we say, okay, we're going to use 2 ladder trucks in the city of Nashua. Well, now we have to redeploy those trucks, because we have one in the north end of town at Amherst Street, one in the south end of town at Spitbrook Road, and one in the center of town at Lake Street. So logic would say, you get rid of the one in the middle, right? So now we have this whole area in the center of the city that we have to cover. So the ladder truck from Amherst Street covers the downtown and all the way to the Merrimack line and all the way to the Hollis line. The ladder truck in the south end covers the Mass line, covers the Tingsboro, Dunstable, Hollis, that way. So those trucks are traveling a much greater distance on a much higher frequency when we call them in, if we don't have the vehicle we have. Now, I think, I don't like going back to this master plan, but I just think there's so many relative things in there that they spelled right out, and I'm in full agreement with them. At this point, we have sufficient firefighters in the city of Nashua. We're not asking for more firefighters. We're not asking for more fire trucks. But it did point out, if the city is going to continue to grow with these large-scale developments that are going up, these 4, 5, 6-story buildings that are lightweight wood frame, that have 100 to 200 units in them, then we're going to have to think about. But at this point, we're not there yet. So the independent study says we're okay, we're doing okay. It says we're going to think about it in the near future, but now would not be the time to be reducing, because we'd be playing catch up.
Thank you, Chief. Any additional questions? The follow-up to that same question, or?
Yeah, so you said that you would have to reduce you would have to eliminate a fire company, which you said was 16 people. Now you're saying you're gonna also eliminate a ladder?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, chief?
I'm sorry, I'm speaking in fire department vernacular here, and let me bring this back so you understand it. A fire company, a ladder truck, a fire engine, it's all the same. So we have 3 aerial companies in the city, ladder trucks, and we have 6 engine companies. We would need to eliminate one of them. And I said, for this instance, I just threw out a ladder truck. But each of those vehicles is staffed with 4 firefighters. And there are 4 groups. So if we got rid of one of these vehicles, whatever it is, that's 16 people.
Okay,
So it doesn't matter ladder truck, engine, or whatever, it's,
okay, so just forgive me for
No,
being
that's
so
all right.
dense about this, but, so the 16 people, if you eliminated 16 people, you couldn't man or supply the crews necessary for the equipment that you have now? You'd have to also eliminate a piece of equipment?
correct.
Okay,
We would, so instead of having 9 pieces of fire apparatus on the road 24/7, we would have 8 if we had to reduce.
okay, thank you.
Also, I had Alderman Schmidt, and
I just wanted to say, I remember when Manchester decided that they had to lose some fire support. They were gonna close at least one of their buildings. I know it was a huge budget cut, and the contract with the firemen was up, and there was such contention in the city, and I know they cut it deeply. At that point, I tried to look at their budget, and I couldn't find one for one anywhere in the budget at all. So I really had no way of comparing.
could you pull your microphone in, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
But if you look at the service that Nashua gives, it's tremendous. I mean, you call for help and they are there every single time, and it shows. And if it's got to be 2.25, that's fine. I think that's what you need. That's what you should receive. I did want to say the master plan study was awesome. It showed all of the halos you guys wear. It also showed your warts, and I thought that was tremendous. It's going to give us a place to go with that. Is the public educator position in the budget at this point?
So, I'm sorry, Mr.
Chief?
Chairman, thank you. So, in our budget proposal, yes, it's in there.
Okay.
That's the all-in number. The number I just gave you was the number of the bare bones
Yep.
that we would need to keep 180 employees with natural fire rescue for the next year.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Alderman Wiltshire?
Thank you. I don't expect this will happen, but how do you choose which firehouse to close?
Chief?
I don't know, I'd be asking you.
Well, I
No,
live in the
I-
inner city. I
I-
would tell you to close one further out, but I don't want to see that.
You know what, we talk about this all the time, and it would, who becomes the haves and who becomes the have-nots in the community? And how do we make that decision? And I guess data would drive our decisions. But the data can't tell us that at 11:55 at night, we're going to have a 3-alarm fire in the most densely populated portion of our community. And then again, at 2:55 in the afternoon, we're going to have a 3-alarm fire in a not so densely populated portion of our city where we need all those resources. We have become a society that calls the fire department for everything. Now, I know that other city departments get phone calls for different things. Alderman Lambert is in the audience, and he's new to the Board of Fire Commission. And he just got a tour because of COVID, all of our facilities. Chief Buxton took him out. But one of the things he's been amazed with since he became a commissioner was he sees every call we go on. And he's absolutely amazed at what people call us for. The problem is, we don't have the ability to say, no, we're not coming, because we don't know what the problem is. So we're going to everything and anything. And that's from the 3-alarm house fire, to the person stung by a bee, to the person that smells something in their apartment, to the child with his leg stuck in the rungs of a chair. You can't make this stuff up, but again, we become a society that when you have a problem, you dial 911. We provide a tremendous service to this community, and at times it becomes an excess where we do lift assists. Like clockwork, every morning, my phone vibrates, and I look at what the call is, and we are going somewhere in the community for a lift assist. We're an aging population. We're trying to encourage younger people to move into our city, but we're an older population, and these people have no other resources, and they call the fire department.
Thank you, Chief. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Chief. I just want to reiterate exactly what you're saying. To the public that may or may not know, I spent 35 years on the force. When I retired in 2015, I started in 1981. The exact number of fire apparatus, the exact number of fire stations was the same in 1981 as compared to the day I retired in 2015 and now 2021. The city has grown, folks. It has grown tenfold, 1981. I'll show you where the empty field is, where right now stands the Pheasant Lane Mall. The DW Highway didn't look like it does now. And Amherst Street didn't look like that either in 1981. They rolled up the streets, folks, except for Thursday nights on Main Street. Because Thursday nights, I would meet you at Miller's. But the thing is, compared to today, look what we've done with the downtown. We have people there on several nights a week enjoying. We've done everything to increase. We have made Nashua the Mecca, the place to really come in and bring your family in and grow. But what we've done with the fire department, if it hasn't grown since 1981, I don't think we've done anything. So I think the chief is right. I'm scared. I don't want no part. If the chief mentioned earlier in this conversation, they got an award with Rockingham Ambulance for the percentage rate of lives saved of people who have a cardiac issues. Well, folks, do you want to be a member of the team that picked the ward that your loved one's going to die of a heart attack? Because we can't get the fire company there, because it's usually the engine company that is there first. Or do you want to be that person sitting in the DW highway involved in an auto accident, waiting to be extricated because we can't get the jaws of life there, or the current tool that is used now. They can't get that tool there to extricate the victim. That's concerning to me. That's not what I think the taxpayers want. And I think any suggestions to cut anything, to me, the proof is in the pudding, folks. If it hasn't grown since 1981, then I challenge the mayor to show me where the fat is, baby. Because if it was there the same in 1981, and it's the same thing in 2021, I don't see what we're really talking about and why there should be any type of reduction. So Chief, I hope that this board, the Budget Committee, can work with you in the future to try to reclaim some of this and try to get back. Being on infrastructure, we like to see the projects that are coming forward in the city and see them go, and maybe having that new position in the fire marshal's office is very good. Part of the things, like you say, I agree. I worked many years with the fire marshal. Keep in mind, folks, the state of New Hampshire has New Hampshire State Fire Marshals, but we have our own. And the reason we have our own, because they're one of the best. And the conviction rate is one of the best. And, you know, to rely on, like other communities, relying on the state, I don't know. It's very shameful. So I hope we can work with you, Chief, in the future and try to work with the mayor's office and try to do something with this. I think when, you know, one thing about education is one thing about having enough sand when it snows, but I think what we're talking about is life of the community here in an emergency situation. It seems like when we had an opiate crisis, who do we go to? The fire department with safe stations. Seems every crisis, who do we go to? The fire department. I hate to have your numbers depleted since the fire department, and I say it in the highest degree of prejudice, but I hate to see your numbers depleted because of a budget when you guys are the go-to people. So, thank you.
Any other questions for the fire department? Yes, Alderman Jette?
Chief, I just want to be clear. I don't mean to, I don't know if you meant this when you said it, but I heard you say that you needed a minimum of 2.5% over last year's budget. Is that?
Chief?
No, I meant it. I'm being totally transparent with you. That's what we need at a bare minimum to maintain the fire department as it is today.
Okay, so in full disclosure, I don't want you to say something you don't really mean, but when I multiply last year's budget by 2.5%, I come up with 27,328,106, which is less than what the mayor is proposing. So I don't know if, maybe my calculator is wrong, but I just want to be clear. I just don't want you to be stuck with something that you didn't really mean.
Alderman Lopez has got his hand up too.
Yeah, hang on, the chief's looking for something.
So the 2.525 number is reflective of taking the public education officer out, taking the clothing allowance, no, that's a neutral, taking the HVAC, taking the technology operations, taking the PPE out. That leaves in the utilities, which shows us $460,000 short of what we need. Or that's the increase it would be to get to the 2.52 number.
The increase over last year's budget?
I would say yes, that's what this was figured on.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Any of the committee members? Alderman Lopez?
Yeah, just an observation regarding the napkin math that's being done. You should probably adjust for inflation before multiplying it as well. because the dollar this year isn't the same as the dollar last year. And there are a lot of supplies that have changed in price as well. So I would never, as alderman, hold you to that just because of a comment in the committee. And I would also just want to reinforce that the fire department is incredibly valuable to the city in terms of the service that it offers. It's very valuable to taxpayers in terms of the insurance benefits it provides, but it's essential to the person who's experiencing a life-threatening emergency that they get that first responder. Not to detract from Alderman O'Brien's point that, you know, we turned to the firefighters for the safe station. We didn't actually have to turn to the firefighters. They were bearing the brunt of the emergency calls and stepped forward for the safe stations. And they were the ones who drove that effort in what it ultimately represented. We're seeing a less locally originated effort now through the Gateway program. It's the result of state level hub and spoke planning, and from what I've seen on the ground, it's not as effective. It's nowhere near as responsive in the emergency moment. It's not the standard that we want to be looking at. So when we do look at other cities and other communities, we don't want to take their standards as though they're superior to ours. I think our fire department does, by and large, a very, very effective job with what they have. But I think it's also important for us to recognize that we have not adjusted their funding system. We haven't grown the tax base in a way that allows us to have extra revenue, or even if we do, we're subject to things like state politics gobbling up $11 million of whatever tax base we have. So while I don't think it's the solution to every problem, I do think we need to start looking at different ways of generating local revenue. That can be traced directly back to the organizations and the city departments that need it. I think maybe the licenses isn't going to be a major contribution, but I think we do need to start looking in that direction about different ways to look at funding services that keeps money in the city and addresses the needs of departments without being as subject to larger input. Because shutting down a fire station is a major problem for our city. Changing our trash pickup to every other week is a major problem for our city. Having a school closed down and not being able to provide special needs services, these are all major problems. And I think because we have only the real significant focus on general revenue, that they get put against each other in the Board of Aldermen and in the mayor's budgets time and time again. And I think we need to start looking at making sure that those departments that need specialized funding and have a higher priority are able to protect the revenue that they need to do that, so that we're able to make financial decisions based on what the situation calls for, not based on what we happen to have due to a bunch of other factors.
Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Any other questions or concerns regarding the National Fire Rescue budget? Seeing and hearing none, thank you very much for coming in. And we'll be going through the rest of the budget process and hopefully having a budget by the 1st of July.
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the Budget Committee for hearing us tonight. And by all means, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And again, thank you for the incredible job you guys are doing. These are challenging times and these are tough decisions. But at the end of the day, we have full faith in the board that we'll make it work. We'll make it work. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make the motion to table R 21-142, which is the city budget, by roll call.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jette,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea. Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dow.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion carries, and R 2142 is back on the table. General discussion. Anyone for general discussion? Okay, seeing none. Public comment? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address the board? Seeing and hearing no one. Remarks by Alderman? Alderman Wiltshire?
I'd just like to thank the fire department, commissioners, financial people, everybody for the great job they do for our city. They're always first. You know, you always show up first, and I just think your dedication is outstanding, and the board does appreciate it. I can probably speak for all of us that we all do appreciate all the work you do, so thank you for that. And the over and above work you do as well.
Anyone else? And I too would like to thank the National Fire Rescue. No one knows how much they need you until they need you. And once you have served them, then hopefully they can tell other people just how much we need a good National Fire Rescue. You save lives all the time, you save property all the time, and people appreciate that. And I'm sure people don't want to see their fire insurance costs go up, especially businesses. So thank you very much for coming in. No need for non-public. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn by roll call.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jette,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries, and we're adjourned at 8:51 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night. Night, Shoshana.